Greetings, YouTube. Today I'd like to talk about one of my favorite books from the 3.5 edition of Dungeons & Dragons, and that would be the expanded Psionics Handbook. Now, when the edition was upgraded from 3.0 to 3.5, a lot of things changed. Not huge monumental shifts, but there were some significant improvements. They tweaked things here and there, tried to make them better, tried to fix some of the problems that existed with the third edition, and make it a little more playable. One of the things they did was they upgraded the Psionics Handbook to the expanded Psionics Handbook. Now, that title change makes you think that there's an improvement, an expansion of the 3.0 rules in the 3.5 system. In reality, there's a significant difference between these two sets of rules. Now, Psionics have always been an addition to the Dungeons & Dragons game. They've never really been considered part of the core rules. I can remember when they were used back in first edition, and the actual rules that governed them were fairly short, not that many pages, but I never found them intuitive. I never found them all that easily run. I thought that they were far more complex than the magic system, and I pretty much didn't like using them. I did use them occasionally, but they just didn't seem to have the right feel for me. Under the expanded Psionics rules, however, the rules really seemed to finally have their own. They really seem to fit. I think they're equally as useful and as interesting as the arcane and divine forms of magic in the game, but different enough to be distinct. Now, the great thing about the Psionic Handbook is that the psionic powers are not using the classic Gary Gygax Vancian system of magic. Now, the Vancian system of magic is that you have a set number of spells, and for the case of arcane and divine, most arcane and most divine casters, you have to memorize them every day. You wake up, you say a prayer, you study your book, you choose which spells you're going to have for that day. And once you decide to use that spell is essentially removed from your active memory, your RAM, and you no longer have access to it until the next day when you pray or you study again, and you can replace that spell or use a different spell. It's taken from a Jack Vance stories, and Gygax loved the idea. He put it into the game, and it became part and parcel of role-playing history. Now, I don't have a problem with the Vancian system as it is. I think it has a certain feel. It's part of the classic structure of Dungeons & Dragons, and I don't really have any desire to replace it. However, it is nice to have options, and this book gives you a point-based spell system, wherein a spell, depending on the or a psionic power, depending on its power level, has differing levels of power point cost. Most, like, say for example, a first level power would have like a 1 power point cost. So say it's like a ray of energy. You want to fire it. You point your finger at something. You pay your cost, and a bolt of energy flies out of your hand at your target. And there's different varieties. Fire, cold, electricity, things like that. The beautiful thing about this is they scale. So as I get more powerful, that first level ability becomes less useful if you're using one of the other spells in the magic system, because now it's a first level spell. It doesn't scale. It's a part of your arcane or your divine shtick, but it's always going to have that power level that it had the first time you cast it. But if it's a psionic power, I can pump more power points into it. I can make the power more useful to me by dumping more energy into it. And that really increases the utility, not to mention I think it thematically is much more accurate about how people use skills in real life. Sure, I learned how to play a trumpet when I was in 4th grade, but by the time I was in 12th grade, I was better. It was the same skill, but I got better at it. So in this, you have a first level ability, a power, and yet it remains viable all the way through your career as a psionic character. So I think that the whole concept of a point-based system is beautiful. Another thing is, a lot of people say, oh, well, psionics are different from magic, so, there's vulnerabilities. Psionic people are vulnerable to magic, and magic people are vulnerable to psionic abilities. Well, there's a little side note in this book, and it deals with transparency. And transparency says that spells which affect magic affect psionics and powers that psionic powers can affect magic. So if you have an anti-magic spell, it will protect you from psionic abilities. Yeah, you're going to say, okay, that doesn't make any sense, but think of it as just power. The spell is protecting you from power, whether it's magical power or power of the mind in the form of psionics. And I like the transparency rules, and I use them. And I think it makes things a little more across the board. And it makes people more likely to want to play a psionic character, and a little more comfortable with the fact that they're not going to be vulnerable to a psionic character. And then we get to the classes. Some people have a problem with the classes because they think that, for example, the Soul Knife, which is you summon psychic weapons, they think it's a little weak. And I actually have to think an agreement that is a little weak, and I would probably make it a full BAB basic attack bonus class myself, like a fighter, as opposed to a partial basic attack bonus class as it currently is. We have the Psi Warrior, which is an excellent, essential fusion of a psionic character and a warrior. I think it's really good. They did a really good job with this. We have the Wilder, which is kind of a combination of a non-psionic person with a person that's very chaotic. They don't have complete control of their abilities. I've always found them a little bit out of focus. Some people like them. It's never been my choice. We have the Psions, and the Psions are essentially the big power casters of the psionic classes, and they have 8 different varieties, so there's a lot of options here. You can choose to be a mind controller, you can choose to be a person that summons ectoplasmic beings for do your bidding. You can have a wide range of abilities with these characters. They're not physically tough, but their powers are cool, and their powers are variable, and I think that it's an excellent options. It's just full of them for a person that wants to play a psionic character. I've often played with the idea of running a campaign where there were only psionic abilities and there were no arcane or divine magic. And that's a major shift in a role-playing game, and it would take a lot of work, which is why I've never done it. But if you like options in your Dungeons & Dragons game and you've never taken a chance to look at the expanded Psionics Handbook, do so. And one of the great things is this book, without any descriptive text, is part of the system's resource document, the SRD, which means it's free of charge. Go online, look for the SRD, and you can look at all the abilities without any flavor text. And you can decide for yourself whether you'd like to invest in this book. And I think it's well worth your time to look at it. You can use it forever for free. And I think that the investment in the book is worth it because it's got some good stuff in there. Some of the art's cool. And I just happen to prefer to own a book as opposed to spending all my time reading things on a screen.